Money and musicians. This is my first episode that I'm going to talk about this very important topic. Many of you out there who are either musicians or aspiring musicians will have realized long ago that sooner or later you need to give some real deep thought to this big topic of money. I'm quite frugal and I've always been very aware of what I'm doing with my money and investments and why and what my goals have been. And if you are good with money and you don't become a slave to debt or overspending or keeping up with the Joneses, it really does open up so many more options of what you can choose to do with your life. So no question, for everybody, but certainly for musicians, being good with money is a skill worth cultivating. I decided it's time to crack open this big topic of money and musicians because there's been a bit of a stir about money in the music community lately. Of course, with COVID, there was the issue of can musicians even find employment? But very recently, early in the month of June, there was a stir in the music school community because Juilliard is raising its tuition prices for next year. Well, as they do, every year. But some Juilliard students who call themselves the Socialist Penguins have been quite actively protesting this year's tuition raise. Socialist Penguins, very cute Juilliard people. The unofficial mascot of Juilliard has been penguins for quite a long time. So there are big sources, including the New York Times and Rolling Stone magazine, that have been covering these Juilliard protests. And if you're familiar with the YouTube channel TwoSetViolin, which is a large channel for classical musicians, they recently did a video on this topic. I'll go ahead and link you to their video because they have a lot of good information and thoughts. But at the same time, TwoSet guys, I am sorry to say this, but you kind of had me thinking about Fox News. Your story was pretty one-sided. I thought it was pretty cute and endearing how much you were firmly on the side of the Juilliard students against the completely unsympathetic institution that is Juilliard. And I sure do wish, like you, that every student who goes to Juilliard could just not have to pay tuition. But as someone who attended Juilliard, has many friends on the faculty there that I am in touch with regularly, was one of 2 finalists that Juilliard interviewed to become their flute faculty member at their new Tianjin, China Juilliard campus, which, by the way, if they had offered me that job and I had accepted it, I would have taken a pretty massive pay cut that was non-negotiable, so it's not like Juilliard faculty are all just rolling in money. And also as someone who has worked for 21 years full-time as professor of flute at a major university, and someone who is a math major for 2 years, so I really care about numbers. I love to dissect them and think about what they mean to us, what we can learn from them. I'm going to go ahead today and give you my own take on this situation with the rising cost of tuition at Juilliard. So here we go. First of all, we have to consider that Juilliard is faced with 3 big problems. First is that prices at higher education institutions in the United States have been broken for a long time. They're on this outrageous upward trend. There's no question about that. That system needs to change. There are already many big companies who are turning away from requiring college degrees. There are many students choosing to attend community colleges, which are much more affordable and still give you the education that you need so that they can avoid the debt and the outrageous tuition that comes with these more prestigious schools. And yes, there are many fields of employment where the employers are saying, we don't care about your college degree. Just ask Elon Musk. He doesn't care about your college degree. They care about other skills that you develop, which you can do without attending college at all. So the whole system is broken, I agree, but unfortunately Juilliard is part of that system. We can't say that the Juilliard administration and accountants are being purposefully greedy and unethical, but they unfortunately just have to figure out the best ways to deal with the fact that they're part of this broken system. And certainly it's worth it for any institution to step up and decide where they can do things better and more ethically. I work at a school that has been named the #1 best value music school in the country, and that's part of the reason that I've continued through my career to work there. I feel very ethical that the students I teach will not go out into life with thousands of dollars of student loan debt. And one way that the school has kept costs down is that none of our professors or administration are considered superstars. None of us get really high salaries. We are paid quite well. I've had a 6-figure salary for many years now, but I'm never going to have an outrageously large salary, and I'm fine with that. But Juilliard is also in a hard spot because it's located in New York City. Everything about New York City has become more and more expensive over the years and past several decades. The whole culture and price structure of living in NYC at all is unfortunately much too influenced by the fact that there are all kinds of finance and other professionals who are paid really astronomically large salaries, and that affects the prices of everything on the entire island of Manhattan and beyond. New York City, for a number of reasons, used to be much more of a haven for artistic types, but now prices have gone up so much that musicians and artists are perpetually being pushed farther and farther away from the center of New York. This means, for instance, that Juilliard has to pay enormous sums for the privilege of having their campus right in the heart of Manhattan at Lincoln Center. They have to charge a lot for their dorm rooms due to their prime location. And there's another thing that TwoSet didn't mention at all in their video, and that is you have to understand the politics of tuition pricing within the United States. TwoSet mentioned the tuition number for Juilliard for the 2021 to 2022 school year, and that is $51,230. And yes, I agree, it sounds absolutely horrible. How could you charge that much to a bunch of musicians and dancers and actors who are going to go out and try to make a living in those fields when they're burdened with all this debt in the first place? But sadly, this tuition is completely in line with what other universities and music conservatories are charging. And as far as the politics of tuition in the United States are concerned, you have to keep in mind that almost no one is actually paying this full tuition. Do you want to know what percentage of Juilliard students actually pay full tuition? 8. It's 8%. That means 92% of the students at Juilliard are on some amount of financial aid. And Juilliard, because they have a great endowment, they do much better giving scholarships than nearly every other school who charges this amount of tuition. This is what I mean about the politics of tuition pricing in the USA. Those who can afford to pay this much tuition, or at least Juilliard deems that they can, and who have not received a merit scholarship, those are the only ones who will pay this full tuition. And you have to keep in mind here the backdrop of the wealth problem that we have in the United States. It's a real problem. The wealthy are getting wealthy much, much faster than the middle class and the poor. Perhaps if their child is enjoying the benefits of attending there, they should help the school to succeed. Let me tell you my own experiences with Juilliard scholarships so that you can understand where I'm coming from. I attended Juilliard as a doctoral student, and we were all called not just doctoral students, but star doctoral fellows. Once we were admitted to the doctoral program, we were all given full tuition scholarships. There were 9 in my class, so it's extremely competitive and selective, but once you're one of those few students who get in, your tuition is covered. And now I know that Juilliard awards doctoral fellows not only full tuition, but also a living stipend so that they can afford to live in New York. Juilliard does not want to lose top talent to other schools because of the cost of being in New York. And as of 25 years ago, I was admitted to a lot of top-notch doctoral programs that had tuition very comparable to Juilliard. I can tell you that Juilliard gave me the best financial offer of any of those schools. Now I know you might start to wonder why I'm sticking up for Juilliard and not the little guy, which would be the student. Well, no question, there are problems that Juilliard needs to address. But they can't and aren't going to do it all by themselves. The whole system of higher education in the United States, one way or another, needs to be overhauled. But here's the other reason I'm sticking up for Juilliard. It's for the morale of those students who are there now, and also for the morale of those students who may want to attend someday. I've heard a lot of people say in reaction to this news that Juilliard is raising tuition, you see, Juilliard is a school for rich kids. And they should know that hoping to attend Juilliard is not unrealistic, and it is still something wonderful to do with your life. TwoSetViolin mentions in their video about this topic that now 1 year of Juilliard costs $84,502 per year. If I were an up-and-coming music student right now myself, that number would be horrifying to me. I would give up. But that number in the mid-80,000s for 1 year of school, I'm sorry, simply isn't true. That number assumes all kinds of things. It assumes that you're paying full tuition, and it assumes that you're staying in a single dorm room. I'm sorry if you're a poor student. Why the heck would you do that?
You wouldn't! Don't! Just don't do it!
You could instead, when you're filling out the housing request form, take a couple of seconds and choose a double dorm room instead of a single dorm room, and that right there will save you $4,930 a year, because that double dorm room is $19,810 a year instead of $24,740 a year. Or even better, do what I did. You want to know what I did? I found a friend, and we found an apartment to live in Manhattan, not a dump, but not something luxurious. We split it. I stayed in the bedroom, she stayed in the living room, and we both paid half of the cost of a single bedroom apartment. This was a long time ago, of course, but that was $600 a month, and even back then that was much cheaper than staying in the Juilliard dorms at all. I also had to feed myself, which again, guess what? Saved me a lot of money. So let's go back and look at tuition numbers again. Juilliard tuition for 2021 to 2022 is $51,230. That's up $1,970 from tuition for 2020 to 2021, which was $49,260. Anyone in American academic circles will tell you that unfortunately that is a quite typical and unsurprising price hike in tuition for a single year. That increase is just about exactly 4%. It would still be nice if it could more closely mirror inflation at more like 2.5% or so a year. Tuition increase is expected every single year. But think about real estate, if you're at all educated about that, and especially about what's happening right now. It typically goes up around 4% a year, but right now it is skyrocketing at much more than 4% annually. And in fact, if we look at tuition over the years that TwoSet mentions, what we see is that in 2017 to 2018, as TwoSet mentions, Juilliard tuition was $43,170. 3 school years later, in 2020 to 2021, Juilliard tuition had risen to $49,260. That means over the course of those 3 years, tuition rose an average of $2,030 per year. So this year, in fact, is a smaller raise in tuition than you would expect given this trend. What this all boils down to is that the Juilliard tuition increase for this upcoming school year is in no way different or unreasonable within the American system of higher education. I'm proud of those Socialist Penguins for taking a stand and showing people that this matters and that we need to think about it and come up with solutions. One thing I will say, and I'm totally with TwoSet on this, the price hike in the dorm rooms for next year is quite surprising. For the 2020 to 2021 school year, a single dorm room cost $18,870 for new students. And for next school year, a single dorm room will cost $24,740 for new students. I think if the Juilliard administrators truly wanted to appease these Socialist Penguins, they should really just dive in and explain this increase. Not the small price bump in tuition, but this rather large bump in the cost of dorm rooms. I think it'd be very helpful for the students to know whether it's due to Juilliard's rent at Lincoln Center being increased, or whether with COVID they need to hire an army of people to better sanitize everything, or what the cause is. This can't be explained just by inflation. Let's sum up what we've talked about here, what the takeaways are from today. First, don't assume a victim mentality. Don't tell yourself that the system is unbeatable and you simply can't work within it. That makes you feel like you might as well not even try, and that's going to make you discount the advantage of attending a school like Juilliard. Empower yourself by believing that you can come up with better solutions than those that are just simply handed to you. And of course, the best way to empower yourself is to practice hard. Convince them when you go and audition that you deserve a merit scholarship. When I got into Juilliard, I remember my dad saying very early on, I'm afraid that now that you've been admitted, you're gonna get your financial aid package and you're gonna realize that you can't afford to attend. Well, guess what? I got my package and I had a full tuition merit-based scholarship. This can happen to you as well. Remember that it is really valuable for musicians to be in a community like Juilliard. It's not only the new and improved skills that we acquire from being in a place like that, it's also the network of people, the faculty, the students, the early professional connections that you will keep throughout your entire professional life. So don't just poo-poo the whole thing and say, who needs Juilliard? We need to be in a place where we are interacting with other musicians and artists of the very highest caliber. They will help us to bring up our own game. Then once you get in and you have the privilege of attending Juilliard or someplace like it, acknowledge that you do have a lot of control over how you spend your money. Let's look at the expenses that add up to $84,502 per year and see how we can bring them down lower. Cross off at least a good chunk of your listed tuition. What if you get a full tuition merit or need-based scholarship, or at least a partial one? Cut other expenses. As we mentioned, choose the double dorm room instead of the single, or find alternate housing in the city that's even cheaper. Now take a look at the health insurance cost. Note that this health insurance is a better deal than almost all health insurance that you will ever find. But also, you only need to pay for it if you're not still covered by your parents' health insurance policy. If their policy still covers you, you can cross this expense off altogether. And most often, if you are a regular college-age student, their policy will. Recognize that every other listed expense here you can bring down. You don't have to spend as much as they say on personal costs or on transportation costs. Also, come on, find some ways to make money. Did you realize that Juilliard just changed things so that all the students who work there at Juilliard will make at least $15 an hour? Also, you'll be a musician in New York. It will be so easy for you, especially attending Juilliard. You'll be playing gigs and teaching students, and you can charge well for those services in New York City. While we're on this topic of college tuition, next Friday when I release my next video, it's going to be about the money hacks that I used myself going through college as a music student to make it much less expensive. It's really worth coming out of college in the best financial shape you can. That's true whether you attended school to become a musician or an accountant, but ironically, it's much more important for musicians to be in great financial shape coming out of college than it is for accountants. In the meantime, if you want some homework, watch that TwoSetViolin video. Let me know if this gives you any questions that you want to address specifically in next week's video, and leave any questions or comments about money and music schools that you may have. And please go ahead and like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Next time we'll get back to work on all of this to tackle these money questions together.